welcome to a special edition of Five Stones Podcast. As you know, I'm Raymond Modslin. I am one of the hosts, along with two of our other hosts are here today.
Yeah, greetings. I'm Colin Haggard.
I'm Joe Trester, the real estate advocate.
Yes. So with us today, we have managed to find a fourth seat that we have been talking about. And with us, we actually have a very esteemed guest today. Mr. Craig Haggard is here, and he is an Indiana State Representative. Well, I'm glad, like I said, I still go back, and I'm glad to see that, Craig, you're championing this, and that it is probably something that is a lot more dangerous than people think, because they haven't heard it yet. And I'm glad that there's somebody out there that is looking out for other people, present company included. And now we say we can know one good politician.
Are there murmurs of this being some kind of unconventional warfare against the United States?
Here we go. I wonder how long that was going to take.
We mean stuff like this?
Where's
Stuff
that
like
tinfoil?
the CCP buying property, CCCP
Oh,
buying property.
100%. So, you see the land, and that's the easy thing. It's the low-hanging fruit. But the reality is, so here's another thing that's in my bill. A lot of people don't know this. Under current law, and I always like to say Xi Jinping can get out his checkbook and go, Purdue University, and I'm not knocking on Purdue, but any university, and write a check for $249,000 to the school, University of Pennsylvania,
Yes.
famously, funded a certain person's presidential wing or whatever it was. But they could do that in Indiana and not have to report that. And so in my bill, it basically said what I want it to be. They wanted 50,000, but I think I have to report every penny. Every penny. If I'm charged 3 cents by a bank, that has to go on my campaign finance report. Yeah. So I think that any money, now it doesn't even say you can't do it, but it's saying you have to report if a foreign government, especially a hostile foreign government, is giving you hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's done. And that is influence. And you can't tell me that in our universities that influence isn't pushed for something. And here's the thing, I'll say this, and people look at me odd. I'm not necessarily mad at China for doing what they're doing, because that's what they do. That's what I'm not saying that we don't do psychological operations and other things like that. But the problem is we need to recognize they are an adversary. I'm not saying get in a war, because we're huge trade partners, and there's the ways to level the playing field. Like, I'm a free trade guy, but I'm a fair trade guy. And what we don't have is fair trade with China. From, we have they have higher tariffs, we don't. They have this, we don't. They steal our intellectual property. That's not fair trade. Put it on a level playing field. And the reason why American companies flock over there is because they can use their cheap labor, their labor camps, their slave, all that stuff, get away from, because in our country we have a lot of protections for our folks. They don't over there, and so it incentivizes us. So that's not free trade. So you have to look at it, at least I think you have to look at it that way.
I agree with you. I guess I feel like we a lot of times pretend that they aren't an enemy, because we have all these things that we bring in from there, and we just kind of turn a blind eye to the fact that we don't have to be declared in war with them for them to be attacking us in all these different ways, the stealing of property, intellectual property.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like you almost listened to our
previous
podcast. We just had this.
We just talked.
It's flowing through me right now
about the sale of TikTok and forcing the sale, and then is there an economic war going on?
100%
kind of behind the scenes.
Well, think about this, and this is something with TikTok, because I'm getting blown. Even my own kids, I don't have TikTok. I understand that TikTok has made a lot of great folks famous, these influencers. I understand it's great for getting a hold of kids. I understand there's great Bible studies on TikTok. I have another legislator. Well, I have an awesome Bible study. And I said to him, I was like, that's because it's a successful, that's what they want. And I said, those really attractive ladies that dated the Marines in Russia, I said, they weren't ugly. And they weren't, bad conversationalists, and they weren't this. They're great, and they're beautiful, and they're great at what they do, and they got the Marines to spill their guts on secrets. Just the way with TikTok, if you're doing a psychological warfare, you want a successful thing that it probably is great. It's great for information dissemination. It's great for businesses. I'm sure there's the best Bible studies in the world. All that stuff on there because a lot of that is legitimate, and that's how these things work. When a foreign government uses these for adversarial purposes, most of it is probably good, and most of it is probably whatever. But then you can then take it and influence our kids. If you look at the content given to our kids here versus the algorithms and over there, it's all about family and work and blah blah blah. The good success stories. Over here, it's garbage.
Yes.
And if you look in this, I don't know how controversial you get on here, but you look at two of your biggest proponents and influencers of, I'll just say transgender stuff. Those are two Chinese communist CCP individuals that push that in the United States.
Yeah.
Unapologetically. And here's the thing, I don't care what people do. And so I want to just put that clear. As long as you're an adult, you don't hurt anybody, I don't really care. But the problem is they use these successful things. And so when people say, because I've heard this, a forced trade, well, that's not capitalism, that's not, all this stuff. Well, it's not really. You have to then separate what is trade and capitalism versus a foreign adversary using our own system against us. It's almost like, well, they got us. I guess we'll let them take us down because they got here first or whatever. They're using the rules. And they are using, just like this bill I passed, it wasn't illegal. And because people find a way. And until we know it's happening and know, oh, wow, they figured out a way to do something very bad, but it's not illegal, so there's stuff happening. We see it all the time. Like, well, we'd like to do it, but there's no law that says they can't. And
so it's wrong, but it's not illegal.
There's no enforcement. Now, we don't want to I'm not to be the moral, I'm a small government guy. I don't think you should be able to tell anybody what to do. But this was blatantly deceptive. Blatantly, they're getting paid for no services rendered. All that kind of stuff. So it has precedent of stuff in law. And so I want to be careful. It's a fine line. You want to say, well, we should do this, but I don't want big government either. So.
Well, I thought it read something to the effect of to more clearly state what is disallowed in some other law, and that's what this was.
Right. It's like, here's a clear definition of what's going on.
Yeah, there we go.
We're not just going to be, we think this. No, you need to clearly define it. You need somebody to monitor that, and then you actually need an avenue to punish people for it. Because if you don't have those last two things, we actually have a lot of laws on the books that nobody monitors, everybody breaks it, and there's no way to penalize somebody because you actually have to put that in code that if this happens, then we can do these things.
It seems like the laws now are kind of used as a hammer when needed. So you have
100%.
all these laws that you're violating, and it doesn't really matter until it matters. And then when somebody needs to get something on you, you've been doing these 41 things or something.
That's
ironically, on a federal level a lot.
That's ironically funny because when one of my topics we talk about is that, and I akin it to jaywalking, where jaywalking technically is illegal. People do it every day. Nobody says anything until the guy gets hit by a car and goes, "Oh, I want to sue." And then somebody goes, "No, wait a minute, you were breaking the law and jaywalking."
It suddenly matters.
Yeah, now that law matters. Yeah. So I think that's kind of what you're trying to say.
Well, I feel like we're left in the dark often, especially federal level, but I think people are less engaged with government than what they should be and
100%.
What they used to be. So I wonder why, if they're going to ban TikTok, perhaps they ought to tell us what they know that we kind of suspect but don't know, but culturally, and people might make the decision to not use it, or they might make different decisions, but...
I hate to go back to the main topic that we started with.
Why would we do that?
Yeah. Is there a mechanism, and I know that you have a date of like March 15th for if they haven't recorded and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Is there a way or a mechanism that someone can get this lien removed if we determine in some fashion, I don't know, that it is an illegal lien or an invalid lien or an unscrupulous
deception
lien?
of some
Well, I know that some of the lawsuits going on, once we put some language to try to go along with the suits against these companies to try to help if a similar suit was brought. Now, what we can do and what I've seen before is we wait until that suit's done and see how it plays out in the courts.
Right.
And then seeing that decision, now we have some precedent where we can go up then and clean up an existing law and say, okay, we're going to add some stuff because this happened. We can now say, based on this, and maybe clean that up. So a lot of times, and I've seen this where, hey, I want to do this on these things. One in particular was the bathrooms in schools, and we had like 3 or 4 folks. Michelle Davis, who's a rep from around here, wanted to put a bill on that says, hey, you have to use the bathroom in a school based on your gender you're born at birth. And the Attorney General's office, and we talked to policy people, Attorney General's office, talked to all the people beforehand and said, what do you think? And they said, well, there's 4 national lawsuits or 5, and actually there's more going on with Attorney General's offices all over the country. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Because based on a lot of that, good or bad, I mean, that's what we have to deal with. And then we will sometimes use that language or precedent set to write some of our bills so that, because at the end of the day, we check, and I specifically check with the Attorney General's office, because that's our lawyers. They're our guys. That's our, if we get in trouble legislatively and stuff, not if we go and, do bad things at a bar, but if we, do legislatively, we got to get our own lawyers for that. But we check with them to say, if we're going to write this, how can you help us craft this language so you can best defend it if it goes to court? Because we had that this summer with the whole gender affirming care thing, and we were sued as a state, and there was an injunction on that, and then we actually prevailed with that recently. But so we do ahead of time wait or look or talk to them what precedent has been set, because at the end of the day, it's only, like with unconstitutionality, it's only unconstitutional until somebody sues you. Now, I don't believe that as a person who took the oath. I specifically believe what's constitutional and unconstitutional, but unfortunately with our laws, there are people that will challenge those all the time, so we have to see, let it work up through the court system. And
how do we cope with maybe a federal issue more than a state, but there's a lot of, I would call, activist judges now. So I mean, you almost have a kind of a crapshoot of which judge
you can
gets
shop
assigned.
well, and at the district, on the federal district level, they shop. For sure, they shop.
Yes.
And I think we all know the 9th district, is where a lot of these go.
Oh, yeah.
It's had the most overturned decisions, I believe, and I'm probably maybe getting that wrong, but
No, it was the 9th.
It is.
yeah, and so it's at
circus
the end of the day,
court.
you're just like, anymore, it's like, oh, the court said. I'm like, yeah, well, it's got about 3 more courts to go.
Right.
Because nobody just leaves. Now, sometimes they just leave it alone. It's like one that's going on that everybody may hear about John Rust running for Senate, right?
Yep.
Education group, and then I think a couple of years ago, another candidate in the 4th couldn't get on the ballot for the same reason, and then the Supreme Court, the Indiana State Supreme Court, I believe, once they made their decision, that the primaries over said at this point, it's moot whether we made a decision or not. So they actually didn't hear it because they have so many cases to hear. And then you'll hear people say, the Supreme Court, we won. It's like, well, no, they didn't hear it. That doesn't mean you won, but
We didn't lose.
we didn't. So, you can always spin everything, right? Yeah. And that is, waiting for that court system thing is a frustrating thing.
The last few years have proven that it's a time, stretch the time out. I mean,
It's time and money.
Yeah,
and some people, they
keep.
keep pushing it because they have unlimited funds. And then you have that little guy. But the good thing is, I've seen pop up with a lot of this liberty and freedoms issues. You do have a lot of organizations that they say, hey, this is an important national precedent-setting case that we believe in, so they'll take those on and pay for them. So we do have those groups that do that.
There is a group called the Cigar Rights of America that does that a lot with, cases about smoking and non-smoking cigars. If they deem it's important, they will take it on as their financial burden to help that small guy.
So what lies ahead for your race? What does the race for Congress look like?
So I formed I started looking at this a long time ago. I had folks come to. So the crazy thing, and I just want to make this clear because everybody, I didn't jump into this as a stepping stone for anything else. I never wanted to be a politician. I never wanted to be one of these guys. And so I obviously had a 22-year career in the military. I then was head of I was a senior guy for the NRA for Indiana for 6.5, just under 7 years. And I'm actually currently on the ballot for the NRA National Board of Directors. So if you're an NRA member out there, shameless plug for myself. Go ahead.
They're another group that will take.
Oh yeah, they have they definitely have the folks that'll take on precedent-setting cases.
Yeah.
And there's some issues with the Rifle Association that we're gonna have to clean up. But it's still it's the oldest civil rights organization in the country. it was actually started mostly for safety and accuracy. It started by Army Guard officers in 1873, National Guard Army officers because they didn't have a standardized training program.
Yeah.
And so it's a great group. Like any group, it can get top heavy, and you can have bad things that happen. And were there bad things that happened? Yes, there were. To what extent the courts you saw decided, what the thing I saw that was great about that court case in New York that just finished was they said the NRA did the right thing when we found out it was going bad. They cleaned up the whole Ackerman McQueen, Wayne LaPierre stuff. And as a matter of fact, I believe he was, he has to pay the NRA back money. And so that actually I think is good for us because it's still, I think, one of the greatest Second Amendment organizations in the country, and it just needs cleaning up. Every once in a while the forest needs to be burnt down a little bit and let it grow back up, and that's why I was asked to run for the board.
All right.
On that, but as far as the
Good luck on
congressional,
that.
thanks. But on the congressional race, I had people when this seat opened up that I'm currently sitting in. It was a new open seat after. There was no incumbent. It was after the census, and they created a new district. So I'm District 57, which was down around Shelbyville, that number designee, but now it's up in Morgan and Hendricks and Johnson County. But so I talked to my wife, my kids are all grown. I felt like, I fought in the military, I fought Second Amendment. I want to continue to fight. And so I looked into it. I did my first couple years, and it's awesome. I really, really enjoy it. I'm not tainted yet, I don't think. And I really actually enjoy fighting and helping out folks.
Good.
So about a year ago or so, I had a group out of, they're out of everywhere, but out of D.C., called Americans for Prosperity, who backed me in my race. And they came to me and said, hey, we believe this seat's going to be open because we heard he's going to retire and all this stuff. We'd like you to start looking at it. And so I started kind of exploring, not officially, almost a year ago. And then in November of this last year, formed officially with the National Election Commission folks, an exploratory committee for the 4th Congressional District. But I put out a letter to all the 4th chairs and vice chairs and the committee people of the party. Hey, I'm not going to challenge the incumbent. Respect him, respect his service in Vietnam and all the stuff he's done. But this is who I am. I want to be your next guy, and I want to get to know you. I want you to get to know me. I want to find out. I want to travel the 4th and do this, and here's my number, stuff like that. He decided to run this time, and so now officially, and we'll probably switch that over in May, but I'm going to be officially running the full campaign and start visiting the 4th Congressional District for the 2026 election, or if for some reason, he may resign early or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, because I think it's important I think what happened this time, you've all seen it in the 6th and the 5th, it's at the last minute, oh, by the way, we're all retiring. And then you have multiple candidates, and now somehow you're supposed to, because right now you have it going on in Johnson County in the 6th Congressional District. Here's 5, 6 guys, whoever's running, and here's a bunch of TV ads and some flyers. You get to know me and vote for me.
Yeah, and pick the winner.
Right, and then everybody's got great flyers. Nobody's going to say, well, I'm not that great of a guy. I'm kind of lazy. I like to sleep in, I like to eat all those fans. You're not going to see that. So how do you get to know somebody? So I think actually this is great, and I know it's not usually done the way I'm doing it, but I literally want to travel about every month and a half the entire district, all 15 counties, and just keep meeting people and letting people beat me up and get to know me. When I go to meet potential donors, I never ask for money. I said before, I want you to actually like me or believe in what I believe in. And I've told organizations, hey, I agree with this, but I don't like this. And I have 2 of those organizations that I'm working with that actually don't like each other. They know I'm working with them, but I've told each one what I like and don't like. And they actually, it's crazy. They like this honesty thing. You're like, wow, we don't get that up front.
Well, that's
Did I hear just honest in politics at the same time? Wow, that's refreshing.
new.
I had my congressional coordinator after, I think it was my 3rd trip from D.C., and I go out there, I do what I call congressional speed dating, because you'll go usually to the Capitol Hill Club, and every 30 minutes you're meeting a lobbyist or a special interest group or staff members or whatever. And I came back, and he always calls out and gets kind of a report how to go. And he said, you need to keep up this honesty bit before it catches on and other politicians start doing it. But I think it may be growing up as a country boy. I mean, my dad, how I was raised, and or being a Marine, that if it stinks, I just say it stinks. But I tell them why. I'm not mad about it, because as a military kind of tactical guy, like, listen, I need to know if the battlefield stinks or it's horrible and it's bad, we're going to lose. I need to know all that, good or bad. Nobody's in trouble, but you need to know what you do or don't like, and that way you can actually do something. And that's kind of how I tried.
So I would think that the establishment, finger quotes, would not like somebody that thinks.
I've upset a few people by the method in which I'm running.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
told, you didn't speak to the proper and kiss the ring and do some other
Yeah.
stuff. Having said that, I think the majority like it, but at the end of the day, that's fine. I don't really care.
But as a voting citizen, though, and I'm very much into history, I think 200 years ago, politicians did not want to be politicians. It was a
Yeah.
big sacrifice, and I think that's a good person to put in office that doesn't want to be there, but knows that they need to be there.
Well, they feel the duty to be
It's
there.
a do, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think I appreciate that about you.
So a lesson I learned, and I just want to throw this in there because I think it's neat. So I learned a long time when I went to SEER school. SEER is the survival school.
Yeah.
Survival, evasion, resistance, escape. Where they go in and they torture you and beat you and they interrogate you and you learn that whole process.
Yeah, we called that the dumb school.
Right.
When I was in the Army.
And I still think it was one of the best schools I went to, and I was smacked around and starved and all this. And we had mostly at the time, because I'm an older guy, a lot of guys who'd been prisoners of war in Vietnam that were a lot of the instructors. I was up in Bath, Maine, is up in the Northeast during a very cold part of the year when we were surviving outside. But what I learned, the best way to get through an interrogation is, and people have to do this. I'm like, no, tell the truth. Not necessarily, now this is a little bit, not necessarily the truth they want, but there were guys in Desert Storm that talked for hours about when OCS or boot camp and this and just crazy, silly stuff.
Yeah.
But they're just writing away. And the reason why they say that is because here's the thing: if you're starved, you're tortured, you're tired, you're beaten, whatever, you never forget the truth, and so you don't trip yourself up. And I've kind of moved that over into the other part of my life, even though sometimes it seems rough. If you tell the truth, you don't have to worry about, they're going to find this out or that out. And so I've kind of just said, I'm just going to be blunt all the time.
Yeah.
Now, some people don't like it. I've been told, well, you're pretty aggressive. I'm like, because I looked you in the eye and told you the truth. And those are true stories. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, if that upsets you, I really don't know what to tell you. I'm not yelling at you. I'm not cursing. I'm just saying.
Well, the truth might be I'm not going to do that, or I'm not going to tell you.
Right. But at least because, and that's one thing I think if you ask most lobbyists downtown, they've already said to me that that's one of them told me it's my shtick. I said, well, it's not my shtick. It's how I
Being
am.
honest is a good
But they
shtick.
like it because they don't have to waste their time. I tell them up front, listen, I don't like this. And I usually say to a lobbyist, don't like it, not going to vote for it. But I tell you what, tell me how I can be a yes on this. I mean, explain to me, this is what I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And either you're going to convince me or not. And there have been a couple of times where I'm like, well, I didn't know that. Now, having said that, I'll go check that. But the one thing, we had this question today when I was talking to a leadership group about lobbyists. How are those lobbyists? Because they're always,
Yeah.
it's always in a shadowy room and, they're kind of the evil folks. But lobbyists, I hope this won't hurt, but they're great individuals. They're your assets. They're the experts of the field. And the biggest way for a lobbyist to not be effective, especially there, you start to learn this is a small group of folks, is to lie one time. Because you'll find it out. So a lobbyist is very honest with you about this. And even if you say who's against you and why, now they'll obviously have their slant on it and why that is wrong, but they'll tell you what the other side believes. I mean, so I would say, once again, 99% of lobbyists are great assets. They're experts in the field, like the land title, the realtor
Yeah.
folks, all that. And you get the story. Now, you may not agree with it, but so they really are a great asset because I can't be an expert on everything. I learned that when I was a commander for all those years. But if I have people I know I can go to and then reasonably tell me the truth, then I can make a decision based on, and I base my decisions, I say on my core beliefs and my constituents, because people have asked me that too, as, what are you going to do if one day you have a vote where your constituents are against you? I said, well, first of all, I don't think that's possible because I believe I was elected because I'm like my constituents. So I'd say the biggest problem is probably, like we all know, is communication. So I would guess that there's false information, and I would probably go to those people and go, what are we seeing something different?
Yeah.
Because I don't really think that way, because I don't think it's me to say, because you see a lot of politicians, well, they're children. We need to, if we don't do this, they don't know any better. Well, I'm not that way because we're not. I think if people have the right information, but I spend most of my time explaining bad information to people. I saw this on Facebook. I saw this on Instagram. My Uncle Johnny said this, and he knows people in the CIA or whatever kind of thing,
There's a lot of spinning going on with stuff.
100%, and it's
Yeah.
frustrating
Yeah,
because
it is frustrating.
we do spend a lot of our time, and a lot of times people just don't believe you either, and it's like I don't know how to prove you otherwise. So
Well, we could do this for hours because I
Yeah.
think it's very interesting listening to all of this. But I know that I want to be respectful of your time, that you're a busy man. Any last comments?
Oh, no, I think it's great. Really
Yeah.
appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Maybe, sometime down the road, come back and let's get some updates and stuff.
Yeah,
if you're
yeah,
open to
I would
it.
like
Yeah,
that.
anytime. I appreciate you having me on. I
Have
appreciate
to
it.
twist your arm for another cigar sometime?
Yeah, thank you for saying that.
All right, once again, remember, hit the bell and the notification. If you've got comments, if you'd like to sit in the fourth chair with us, we encourage that. And once again, I'll make the statement that I made before. Even if you disagree, you can still come and we can still have a civil conversation and figure out why you're wrong. So that's really simple. That we offer that all the time.
Even if you were the only one that voted no on a bill that passed everywhere else,
Yeah.
we'd love to have you on.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good day, man.
Harumph.